Hello and welcome to another episode of Film Club. I'm Chris Garner, joined by my co-host Tate in the Hour, and on today's show we'll be reviewing the latest film by M. Night Shyamalan, the found footage horror film The Visit, which came out earlier this year. This is obviously our recommended movie from the main show, and how that works is that at the end of that we take it in turns choosing a film for this smaller midweek show that vaguely ties in with whatever we reviewed during that main show. So this week was our countdown of our top 10 favourite horror films of all time. And Tate, this was your pick this week.
So I am, well, I'm pretty sure that nobody likes some of Shyamalan's movies. I mean, they're all reasonably terrible. There are some golden ones towards the start of his career, and it's just slowly declined. Before going to watch this film, I saw, hey, some people are liking it, I'll go see it, and I just reminded myself of it when we were doing the horror countdown, so that's why I picked it.
Yeah, and I'd seen, other reviewers, I can mention, like, the Cinema Snob, Brad Jones, he did a review on it as well, and, I mean, I watched a bit of his review as well, but I didn't want to watch spoilers on it, and he seemed to really enjoy it. And then, well, I mean, you look at the budget that it was done on and how much it's made so far. I mean, it was done on a budget of 5 mil. It's took in over 90 mil, which is absolutely immense for like a film like this. And, you know, a lot of reviewers and stuff on Rotten Tomatoes, it's got 63%, which is, you know, it's still
reasonable.
As a review, that's reasonable, and, you know, it seems to be getting a lot of sort of decent reviews, people saying it's a return to form for Shyamalan. So, we'll get straight into our review then. As always, we'll start off with a spoiler-free section, so you don't have to worry about anything like that, and then when we do get into spoilers, we'll let you know ahead of time when we get into that. So, M. Night Shyamalan. Let's talk about him for a while, because I think we need to address the elephant in the room here. Quite not a very good recent lineup of movies. I think everyone will probably agree with that. What you'll mostly hear people say is that he peaked too soon with his first two films, which were The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable. And since then, he's had quite a few stinkers. I mean, ones that come to mind, Signs, the recent one he did After Earth, The Last Airbenders. Yeah.
People say he's made some of the worst films of all time. For high-budget Hollywood films, that people have actually said he has made some of the worst films of all time. And he has now gained a track record where I know some of my friends and stuff like that, they, as soon as, no matter how good the trailers are for his movies, because he does good trailers in them, immediately, as soon as I see the M. Night Shyamalan name, nope, I'm not going to go see that. Yeah. That is a dead movie. It's gone. No point in seeing that. That's going to be a train wreck.
And it was brilliant as well. Like, I don't know if it was his last movie, After Earth, but during the trailer of that, I don't think they used his name at all in it.
No.
Purely for that reason, I think. Like, they never even mentioned his name at all.
I think at the end of the
credits
you can see it, like, at the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah, but I thought that was brilliant. Like, back in the day, like, when his first movies came out, like, his name was batted around everywhere, and then it's since become, like, a running joke. Like, as soon as you just said, like, you see that name come up on the screen, and, like, everyone just lets out, like, an audible groan. Yeah, but with this movie, and we can get into sort of it more.
You didn't see any of, like, advertising campaigns, did you?
No, like, nothing. Like, I didn't see the trailer for this film or anything. Like, as I said, like, I saw a review of it, like, a couple of weeks ago. But other than that, like, I really didn't know much about it. And then when you brought it up, I was like, oh, yeah, that's that movie that's been, you know, recommended, like, fairly recently. But, you know, I'm glad, if I'm going to give, like, a short review now before we get into it, I'm glad I've seen it. It's a decent, you know, small budget movie. It does exactly what it needs to, and it's very effective at doing what it wants to do in the film, and, you know, I think it's a good solid watch. But so the plot of it is that the mother of these two kids is going away on holiday on a cruise with a new boyfriend, and she sends her two children away, a boy and a girl, to stop at their grandparents' house. And when they get to the grandparents' house, their grandparents are acting particularly strange and a bit kooky and very threatening almost, and it basically goes from there. It's a found footage movie, as we said. The daughter wants to record her own documentary. She sees herself as like a budding documentary maker, and she wants to interview the grandparents because the mother and her parents have had a very estranged relationship, and she wants to sort of smooth all that over. And I was saying this before we hit record, but with found footage movies, one thing I always find that I have a problem with is the justification as to why it's a found footage movie. Like, a lot of
Yeah.
times in these films, I'll be saying, well, how did they get a hold of the footage? Why are you still holding the camera when all this bad stuff is happening? And it does sort of get into that territory a little bit towards the end of this film, I would say. But for the most part, as I said, like with the whole reason behind it is
Yeah.
that the daughter wants to make this documentary. You're sort of behind it right from the very beginning, and you know when the kids, like when especially the boy, what's his name, Tyler in the film, when he's sort of like acting stupid and stuff. He is a kid of that age, so you would expect that, and he would be filming stuff like that. Although there is one element of his shenanigans which we will bring up later on in the review, which I don't think both of us cared
No.
particularly for.
No.
But in terms of the format itself as a found footage horror, I think it worked incredibly well.
No, yeah, I agree with it as well. I don't like found footage films, and in fact, I saw the trailer to this film and thought, oh, it's a horror film. I'm gonna watch it, like, just because I enjoy watching M. Night Shyamalan films just for the comedy effect of it. But I wasn't expecting it to be a found footage film. Like, I was going into it thinking, oh, it's going to be they're going to just do some really nice shots and stuff like that, good cinematography out in the woods and stuff like that, but I was not expecting it to be a found footage film at all. And I know that you said it was a found footage film, but I liked that in some cases, like in some parts, there was areas where there was no found footage. The found footage was only there when the girl was making the documentary, which happened to be the main parts of the film, but it also happened to be, like, it suited it. It suited the film completely. I like the blend between the found footage and the normal takes done with just normal cameras.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, as she's walking around, it's like a POV camera. Like, you could almost, pick up on the sense that that is just like a conventionally filmed, movie, really. Like, just as you would shoot like a normal film. In terms of the sort of paranormal activity setup where the camera's left there overnight, there's really only one example of that in the film, which is done very well, but with found footage now, it's just, you can see that with the recent paranormal activity film that's come out, the Ghost Dimension, that genre has pretty much just been like rammed into the ground at this point, and it's very, very rare that you'll get a decent one that comes out that, does it well and it's not over the top and just stupid and cringeworthy. But as I say, like, I think this one did it very well. And I think one of the reasons for that as well is that I really sort of cared about the characters in it, and I talked about this in the horror one. Like, if you give me a horror film that's cliched with bad characters, I'm not going to care about it. But, it can be cliched as long as you have good, compelling characters in it. And for the most part, I thought the two leads were very good. More so, the girl in it, Rebecca Jameson, played by Olivia DeJonge. I thought she was fantastic in it, and I said before we hit record, she really reminded me of sort of Chloe Grace Moretz in this film. She's the one who's a lot more level-headed, a lot more sympathetic towards the grandparents, and she's a lot like mature for her age, I would say, in like how her mannerisms are and how she sort of carries herself. The boy in it is kind of your typical teenage idiot.
I wouldn't even say teenage.
But I do like his sort of back and forth with his sister, because I do think that was very believable.
Yeah. To be honest, personally, I really didn't care for the boy in the film. Not to credit that he wasn't needed in the film, he was definitely needed in the film. But I feel like not only was he a comic relief character, but just didn't suit the tone of the film. Maybe a slightly older child, or maybe a slightly, I don't know, just a little bit more mature. It felt like M. Night Shyamalan was using this guy just so he could get away with immature jokes at some points. I'm not sure whether you felt that same way, but I feel like Olivia DeJonge playing the character of Rebecca, it was a very mature performance. She kept very level-headed, and like, if this was a normal film and she did that kind of performance, people would be shining her names up in lights saying that she's going to be the next big thing, and I would actually like to see what she does after this.
Yeah, definitely, and I mean, I agree with that. That the out of the two, the boy was definitely the weakest. And I don't know if that's a case of like throughout the film, she already starts off with this persona that she's a lot more mature and level-headed, and that sort of progresses throughout the film. And really, the story, without giving anything away, is about her, and sort of like the moral at the end like revolves back to her,
Yeah.
whereas the boy doesn't really get anything like that, and he sort of
He is a side character.
yeah, and he sort of ends the film exactly how he started off in the film. There's no real change in
While
him.
she is different.
Yeah, and see, I don't mind you having like a more comedic character for the brother as long as he was sort of changed by the end of it, and then you could see like a
But
progression of his
he wasn't,
character.
sadly.
Yeah, I mean, like the bit at the start. Again, this isn't like any spoilers of like what happens in the film, but like the side character at the start, who's one of my favourite characters in the film. He's the what would you call it? Like the ticket collector on the train.
Train conductor,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
the train conductor, and like he's seeing that she's recording something. He goes, "Oh, do you need an actor in it?" She says, "No." And that goes into like Shakespeare. He says that he was once a great actor, and the kids are having like fun with him. But as I was saying, like it's about the journey the characters go on and where they end up at the film. And a good film, you can always like watch the first scene of the characters and watch the last scene of the characters and see how they changed. And really, with the kid, and we're going to talk about that end credit scene in our spoiler section. All it doesn't ruin the film, but it really mars the tone that you want to be left with at the end of
Yeah.
that film, I would say.
And it doesn't help that it isn't at the end of the credits, it is throughout
Yeah,
the credits.
yeah.
So people would have, oh, there's something going on in the credits instead of just normal film, okay, we'll leave, there's probably not going to be an end credits scene. It was actually, as soon as the credits started, this scene came up and you just went, no,
Mm.
no.
And you just wanted it to
So,
stop, but it kept going. But if I was going
yeah.
to give a negative against this film, honestly, all of the jokes really didn't hit for me. Like the comedy in this entire script.
No.
I'm trying to think back now, and I don't think I laughed. The only time I laughed was the train conductor guy, because that caught me completely off guard. I mean, all the characters in this, I won't say a kooky, like not to the level like say Twin Peaks, for example, but there's something uneasy about every single character in this film. Like obviously
Yeah.
the grandparents are a given, like that's what the whole film's about. But even the grandparents have like a woman who comes by, like a friend, and just, like drops by the house every now and then to say hi. She's a bit uneasy, and like the train conductor as well. Like you wouldn't get someone talking like that in reality. So there's always this
But
heightened level
I
throughout
thought,
it.
like, when the conductor said, oh, I used to be an actor, and then later on in the film, this person comes to their doorstep and said, oh, I used to do a bit of acting, I thought it was going to be a recurring
Yeah.
thing. I thought there was going to be more and more people going to the door just doing like little one-liner spiels, and that would have been great comic relief. I mean, you'd cut out the kid, the Tyler character, and just have that as a reoccurring theme. That would be brilliant.
So here's the thing, like, now I'm thinking about it, do you think this film would have been stronger if it was literally just the daughter who went there?
No, you need a second kid. Just maybe an older brother who doesn't really care
Mm.
about what she's filming, instead of a younger kid who doesn't care about her in general.
Yeah, because there's even that scene as well, again, not so much a spoiler, where she's sitting on the swing and she asks a brother to ask her questions for the interview, and he like slowly zooms the camera in and is trying to get her to cry and saying he's almost being like a psychiatrist, really, isn't he? And like
Yeah,
helping her unearth like inner feelings, but he's doing it in like a really like sort of horrible and snide way, like he doesn't care about her.
yeah.
And even like with her work, like he doesn't believe in her work or anything like that. He's always criticizing her and saying that his is better. I think both of them have a camera each, don't they? Because like to film separate things, or
I
is it one camera?
didn't remember seeing that. There was one camera, but he was saying that he could probably do
Yeah.
a better job because he was naive, basically.
And then we can get into some of the other characters as well. The mum in it, she's not really in the film all that much.
You see her over Skype,
Yeah.
and that's it.
She's perfectly serviceable. She was a bit sort of, I don't want to say like soap opera style acting, but there were parts where it seemed she was a bit too overbearing, and maybe that's how the
Yeah,
character was written and directed by Shyamalan. But I mean, she again, it's that sort of heightened, quirky level. Like everyone seems a little bit uneasy, like even the mom.
yeah,
But the real stars of this film, other than the main actress of playing the girl, are the grandparents. I thought these two
yes,
were fantastic, especially the grandma, Doris Jameson, played by Dina Dunnigan.
terrifying.
Fantastic performance, and if I'm going to compare like recent horror performances, I would rank her right up there with the one who played the mum from the Babadook. Um,
Yeah,
Brilliant performance, not like just how she acts as well as like how she crawls around on the floor, like the physicality to her acting as well.
it was
Brilliant.
more of also the fact that when they were acting normal, they weren't normal. You
Yeah,
had that uneasy sense about them, even if they were. Oh yeah, sure, they're acting fine. That's what you're saying in your head, but you know that they're not.
right from their first scene as well. And
Yeah,
I mean, we're going to give away not like details of the plot here, but like just a few scenes of like what happens, like a couple of scares and everything like that. So if you don't want to hear it, then I would suggest to pause now. But the first sort of scare that comes into it, because really this starts off, and I mean, in all honesty, I knew it was vaguely a horror film, but I didn't realise it was going to get me this good towards the end. The first scene where they're playing hide and seek under the house, and it's a big house, so there's lots of supports and stuff underneath the porch, and you just see like the grandma just like crawling after them and being with like that really got me, and it was right from that
yeah,
moment I was like, oh, we're in for this kind of movie. Okay. And it's sort of again does like the Shining daybreak, like it'll say like Monday and Tuesday, because I think the kids are meant to be going home on the Saturday, aren't they? And it sort
yeah,
of breaks the film up until it gets close to that date, slowly as the scares start to rank up towards that day. But right from there, it was really uncomfortable, and I was watching this film. Like I don't know if I count this as like a horror, like a dark comedy, because for almost with like every scare to it, like you'll smile and you'll chuckle, but then it'll be like that awkward pause afterwards. It's like after the grandma chases them out the house, she says like, "Okay, everyone inside, dinner will be ready shortly," and like she just smiles, turns around, and walks back in, and like her sort of like dress is like roughed up, and it's just uncomfortable, and that carries on
yeah.
all the way through. And the biggest one as well, which was in the trailer, I think, was the oven scene when she asks the daughter to climb into the oven to clean it.
Yeah.
Really uncomfortable, and I loved all that stuff. And as I say, like if I'm gonna think about it now, this is probably one of the most well done horror films I've seen in the last few years.
Yeah, I'd agree with you completely. I mean, things like it was just the odd scene
Yeah,
that had that horror, but the tension was going throughout the entire film. You didn't know what was happening until the very end, and that just concerned you because you were always guessing. Now I know that Shyamalan does a lot of the whole, oh, I'm going to keep you guessing until the very end, and then I'm going to throw in this massive twist which completely changes your aspect. But I'd say that, like, I know we'll probably speak about the twist and actually what the twist was, but the twist was tame. It was believable, and it was scary as hell.
it made sense to the
and
plot.
it worked with the
Yeah,
plot.
exactly.
Definitely.
It wasn't a really outlandish twist that came at the end that made you question the universe and morals and like just unravel the film and everything like that. It made sense, and the twist was incredibly chilling. And I'm going to be honest, like it did get me. Like I probably should have,
It got me
I
as well.
should have guessed it. I honestly should, but when it happens, and we're not going to spoil it now, my stomach did churn, as I can imagine the characters would have
Oh,
as
my
well.
stomach dropped.
And
My stomach completely dropped.
it was brilliant, and I'm thinking of other horror films that have come out. I don't think a twist's got me that good in a horror film since probably the first Saw film when I first saw that. Really, really good. And as we were talking about, like the uncomfortable nature to the characters, another film I could probably compare it to is the original Wicker Man. How I don't know if you've ever seen that film,
Yeah.
but when he gets there and
Yeah, I have, yeah.
everyone's acting just not quite right, like they're almost normal, but there's something like someone's planning something, and that's sort of what you get from every
Yeah.
character in this film, and it's brilliantly done. But I think we've pretty much talked about everything we can for spoiler free, unless you want to add anything before we move into
Nope.
spoilers.
Let's head into
Right,
the
let's get
spoilers.
to the twist of all twists. So it's during the Skype call, and the kids are saying that the grandparents are going weird, and the mum says like, "Well, show me outside," and they hold up the webcam outside, and then the mum says, "Those aren't your grandparents,"
And
and
oh my
it's the
god.
dawning realization on their faces of pure horror, and then you sort of reflect back on the rest of the film. And honestly, like with that twist, I did put myself in that situation and thought, God, that must absolutely suck to be in that situation. That would be
When
horrible.
as soon as I cuz I didn't guess that. I thought the twist was going to be the grandparents themselves were something
Yeah.
else. I was thinking, oh, it's going to be an outlandish Shyamalan twist. So I was thinking completely outside the box.
Mm.
And that's maybe the beauty of it. Maybe he has been planning this all along to make all these terrible, terrible, outlandish movies
To make this one.
just to come up with a simple plot
Yeah.
twist for once. And I reflected back on it immediately. I was like, hold on. Wouldn't they have seen the grandparents in the Skype? No, they haven't seen the
Yeah.
grandparents in the Skype call. And the grandparents have scratched out the Skype webcam. Oh my god. Oh my god. How are they going to get out of there? It was just well done.
Yeah.
It was so well done.
And like to your point about you were thinking outside the box, like, are the grandparents monsters? Are they aliens? Is this a sequel to Signs? Like things like that. Earlier on in the film, the grandparents mention that they've something scouts the perimeter. Are they on a farm? Am I remembering that right?
They're on a
Yeah.
farm, yeah. Or a
Um,
ranch, or whatever they call
like
it.
scouting the perimeter of the fields. It has white eyes and it's tall, and they say it like stalks the wells and like drags you under and everything like that. So I, in all honesty, was expecting that to happen at the end, or that the grandparents have
Yes.
been somehow possessed by said creature, and it was going to be really sort of like off the wall at the end. But that obviously, after you see the film, must have been a red herring, and I wonder if that was Shyamalan sort of poking fun at himself, being a bit self-aware, maybe leading the audience
Maybe.
on. Because I do think this is a lot more sort of self-aware of his own style than many of his other films. Like, I do think that he
Yes.
plays on a lot of his own tropes in this film, but it does it well and it works for the film. But as a
Doesn't he mention a lady in the water at
yeah,
some
I
point?
think he does.
He mentions there's a lady in the well.
Yeah,
There's a woman in the well. She's been sitting there in the water and stuff like that. And I was thinking, okay, you're referencing yourself now.
yeah.
Not many directors have the balls to do that.
But you know, I mean, if that was the intention, it completely worked, and I think it's subtle enough to work. But I mean, if you are familiar with his body of work, then I think that you can sort of pick up on a few of those, those tropes and everything like that. But I mean, when that twist happens, I mean, before that, you've already had some good scares. You've had the stuff where they set up the camera at night, like Paranormal Activity, like I mentioned, with a jump scare that it did get me. It got me good,
Yeah.
but I couldn't be too mad at it because I've said about this before. But I'm always angry at jump scares when it's just that's the only method of scare tactic in the entire film, and it's not even scary because it's just startling because they always add a big orchestra sting behind it. And that's
Yeah.
not true horror, but I think that, and I think you agreed with this as well, that at that point the film had earned it, because I think, to my knowledge,
Yeah.
that is really the only jump scare I can think of in the film. And it did a really good. It built tension before it, like when they go out at night time, because the grandpa says that you've got to stay in your rooms after 9:30,
After 9:30.
because the grandma has a condition, and I'm trying to think, is it sundown syndrome or something they call it?
Sundown or something like that, yeah.
Which is a condition she has that, it makes a sort of, it's like a more hyper version of sleepwalking. Like, she could be violent, she could be, detached, she could harm herself and everything like that. And it's a
Yeah.
scene where they open the door and she's like naked and she's scratching up the walls and she's like crawling around on the floor like Gollum, and it was really unsettling to watch and genuinely creepy. And as I say, like with horror films, like I like to brag a little bit. I can hold my own with a horror film because I know it's a film, but it's very rare that I'll see a film where it genuinely does scare me. And this one got me. This one, there's a lot of moments, especially I would say like the last half hour of the film
Yeah, and
escalates.
I have to
Yeah.
like. It's strange that the biggest scare wasn't a jump scare,
Mm,
wasn't a built tension scare, wasn't the idea of tension. It was just one simple
mm,
sentence
yeah.
that made the entire film completely different, and it made me
Yeah.
horrified.
And that's what a good horror should do. I mean, as I say, like from that twist onwards, it's probably the most intense ending to a horror film. I mean, I'd rank it
Yeah,
right up there, perhaps with. I know it's more iconic, but the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something.
yeah.
Um,
No, 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 you're right. I mean, this is, I'm gonna have to say, one of the best horror films of the year.
yeah,
I mean, it doesn't really have much competition. You've got Crimson Peak and the new Paranormal Activity
yeah,
film. But I feel like this film did a very good job at, I wouldn't say reinventing the horror genre, but reminding us that horror can be good.
mm,
Like, it doesn't have to be the same formula, and it can be tension built, it can be horrifying, and yeah, I just thought it was a really well put together
Now
movie.
the question is, with a film like this, once you know the twist and you've seen it, would it have the same impact if you watch it a second time? Now I've only seen it the once. I
I've seen it twice now.
Does it hold up a second viewing still, or does it lose a lot of its impact once you've already seen it?
Um, I've seen The Usual Suspects at least 10 times.
Yeah.
And I can go back every single time and I can look for different things which change in the film every time I watch it. Sadly, with this film, the only thing you really had to go on was the whole no communication between the mum and the grandparents.
Yeah.
I mean, she was saying, one thing that I did pick up on was like they were communicating via email. They never phoned each other
Mm.
to organise the visit. But the actual, when they went and killed the previous grandparents was when they were waiting for the kids to come over.
Mm.
So that wouldn't have actually, like, that wouldn't have messed with the, like, the meeting of them at all. Like, they could have, the grandparents still could have been phoning up the mum and saying, oh, come over and stuff like that. The communication would have still been okay. But the Skype call, basically, that was it.
Yeah.
The Skype calls were the only communication between them and the outside world, and it was just a couple of things that, aside from that, that I noticed differently. Other than that, it was basically the same film. I would suggest watching it at least once, but I'd say on a second viewing it does kind of lose the tension and the twist. My stomach still dropped, which is always good, but I knew it was coming that time, so throughout the entire film I was thinking, okay, the grandparents, that they aren't the grandparents.
Yeah.
They aren't the grandparents. Is there anything else I can spot to make it so they are not the grandparents? And no, nothing at all.
Yeah, see, I thought that would be the case with it. With films like this that have a really good twist, and I think the only reason to rewatch them is if you've got someone else you're showing the film to who hasn't seen it.
Or there are details which you are still missing,
Yeah.
like the twist is still shrouded in mystery. There is still some things that you can look at to point to evidence for it, but there was only one kind of thing that you could go on,
Yeah,
and that was the Skype call.
it's a very effective, but it is a very simple twist at the end of it. So I would recommend rewatching this to show it to someone else who hasn't seen it, and you want to sort of experience the twist again through their eyes. Because I did that with the Saw films as well, because I really liked them when I was sort of like following them before they got really ridiculous with like number 5 and number 7. But I mean, I guess we could. Oh, we need to talk about one more thing that we haven't talked about. Well, we've sort of talked about it, haven't we? The rapping in the credits.
Oh dear
But
lord! I thought we were just gonna
no,
avoid
no,
this.
we've got to address this. Okay, now this is sort of like a reprise of the joke in inverted commas that appeared earlier on in the film, where the kid sees himself as a freestyle rapper, and he's like filming bits on the found footage, and that kind of stuff. It always sort of irks me because it's in all of these kind of films where you've got the sort of comic relief joke character
Joke
who's
character.
who's got a shtick and they keep doing it. But you know, when it's at that sort of comedic bit of the film and they're just filming little bits of whatever before the real plot kicks in, you can sort of let that slide.
That's fine.
When it goes through the entire credits, because ultimately the credits are what you are left with after the film's finished, and it's sort of like a time where you can collect your thoughts, take in the film, and think and decide what you think of it, basically. You were talking about this as well before we hit record, that the most effective credits are the ones that don't have music, especially if it's a dramatic ending, because it just adds so much more power to it. Here you get the kid again after all the events have gone down and they've escaped. They've killed the grandparents, and then you get treated to like a 2 or 3 minute freestyle rap of all the events throughout the film.
In the film, including them killing, and seriously, he shows no remorse. He's just like, yeah, I killed my grandpa, but he wasn't my grandpa. It's just like, you don't joke about that. That's a really horrifying experience. I would be in like counselling if that happened to me. Why are you so upbeat? Why are you rapping?
And what's more annoying as well, obviously they've gone through all this traumatic experience, but after that you get the really sort of nice, tender, emotional wrap up of the film where the girl talks to her mum and the mum convinces her to sort of like not forget but sort of forgive her father for leaving them when she was young and sort of move on past it. Yeah. And that was a really nice tone to end it on, and then you get that, and it completely ruins it. I won't say it completely ruins the film because I still really enjoyed the film, but it's just
it ruins the ending.
It ruins the ending. You wanted to be left with either some haunting piano music or just the regular soundtrack of the film, or silence, and that would have been really nice and worked for the film. And I guess maybe some people found it amusing, maybe some people really liked the character and thought it was genuinely funny and laughing from it, but this is what I meant, like, is it intended...
If it was genuinely funny and stuff like that, I'm looking at it now, I don't know how that film was a PG-13.
Was it a PG-13? Wow.
I have no clue on how that got a 13 rating.
There's a lot of old lady ass in this movie, so they're usually kind of...
There's a lot of swearing.
There's violence. Most of it does happen off camera, I grant you, but I mean, still...
Well, that's one of the best PG horror films I've ever seen.
This is right up there with the others. But no, if I'm going to sort of round up now, give my recommendation on it, I would definitely recommend the film to anyone who is a fan of horror, because I think it is... Especially, I mean, this film's worth watching just for the final half hour, if anything else. It's a fairly short film. It's just a little over 90 minutes. I never had to like check my watch or anything like that. It gets in, gets out, does exactly what it needs to do. I would say it's definitely M. Night Shyamalan's best movie since probably Unbreakable, actually, now I think about it.
Yeah.
Really...
I wouldn't say it was as good as Unbreakable, but it was good.
No, I think it's definitely watching at least once. The twist is definitely worth it. And it has some decent performances in there, mostly from Olivia de Jong and the one who plays the grandma, Doris... no, that's her character name. Dina Donegan. I think they're fantastic, and there are some genuinely well done scares in. Some are a lot more subtle than others. You get the occasional jump scare, but it builds tension incredibly well, and ultimately that's what you want from a horror film, so I would recommend it.
And I would recommend it as well. When you watch the film, cut away as soon as it gets to the credits.
Yeah.
Do not watch the credit sequence, because the credit sequence is horrifying. Just don't. I wouldn't even go there.
Be left with the scene just before the credits, and that is still a decent enough conclusion for it, I would say. I wouldn't say it's incredibly game-changing or anything like that in the genre of horror. I can think of a lot of other sort of...
It's a fresh take, shall we say.
It is a fresh take. Definitely on the found footage sort of style of films. That never really bothered me with the film. You're not going to rank this film up there with the all-time horror greats, but I don't think you need to, because I think it's just a sort of like good standalone little horror movie that I would recommend everyone watch. Unless you don't like horror films, in which pretty much you're going to stay away anyway.
Yeah.
But that was our review on M. Night Shyamalan's The Visit. Be sure to rate, like, comment, subscribe, and let us know what you thought of the film. You can follow us at facebook.com/cinemasavvy. We're on Twitter at cinema_savvy, and you can also find us at Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/cinema_savvy. So yeah, that was our review for Film Club this week. Next week for our main show, we'll have our review on the Hunger Games trilogy in anticipation for the final Hunger Games film, Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2. I've never seen those films, so I need to get on those ASAP because there's 3 of them, and I think they're probably well over 2 hours long. Looking forward to them though. I've heard a lot of good things about them, so I'm going to go in with an open mind and see what I think of them. And yeah, well, we don't know our film club next week, do we? It's my choice, so I've got a lot to choose from. So yeah, watch out for that Monday, and until then, thank you very much for listening.